They thought cutting her off would humble her. They didn't know it would ignite her. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about rising so quietly, so completely, that the people who once dismissed you have to whisper your name with respect. When family turns your love into competition, when silence becomes the only language they understand, sometimes the only answer is to build something they can't erase. So before you read this, ask yourself, have you ever been the one left out, only to realize you were being set apart for something greater? Drop "I know that feeling" in the comments if you've ever turned pain into purpose. Follow for more stories about rebuilding your power, rewriting your legacy, and choosing peace over approval. My phone buzzed just after sunrise. A single text from my mother. "We're keeping it small this year, just your brother's side of the family." No call. No warmth. Just a sentence that erased me like I was a typo in her perfect life. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard, then typed back, "Wish you all the best." The silence afterward was almost alive. Outside my apartment window, Atlanta's morning light cut across the skyline, bright, clean, and cruelly calm. They had no idea what I'd been building while they pretended I didn't exist. No idea that somewhere far from their Sunday dinners and phoneless holidays, I'd turned my name into something worth remembering. That text didn't break me. It confirmed what I already knew. Because this year, it wasn't their celebration I wanted to attend. It was mine. People always say my family's complex. That's the polite version. Truthfully, my parents, Gloria and Terrence Hollis, treated image like religion. Everything had to look perfect, sound perfect, shine perfect, especially through my older brother, Donovan. He was their prized son, the one who wore expectations like a tailored suit. Me? I was the shadow they stepped over on their way to applause. Donovan had the charm that drew praise from teachers, the football trophies that filled our mantle, and the charisma that made people remember our last name. I had curiosity and late nights spent sketching mechanical blueprints. Nothing glamorous enough for dinner conversation. I still remember being 14, standing in the crowd at one of Donovan's award banquets, holding a robotics certificate I'd earned that same week. My mom leaned over to a neighbor, smiling. "Our boy's going places," she said. I looked down at my certificate, folded it in half, and realized I wasn't invited to places. I was there to clap. By high school graduation, the pattern was permanent. Donovan got a car with a red bow. I got a used laptop and a hug that lasted less than 2 seconds. When I earned a full scholarship to Langford University's engineering program, my mother's first reaction wasn't pride, it was caution. "That's so far, baby. Don't you want to stay close to home?" My father added without looking up from his paper, "If that's what you really want." They never visited once. Not during exams, not during move-in, not during graduation. But they did post plenty of pictures from Donovan's engagement trip to Jamaica. By the time I turned 27, I had built my own design firm from the ground up in New Orleans. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they'd finally see me. But when my first project collapsed under bad investors, my father said over the phone, "Some people just aren't built for risk, Renee. You're smart, but be realistic. Learn from your brother, he's grounded." That was the last time I asked for advice. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother, Lorraine. She never judged, never compared, never treated me like a backup plan. Every Sunday, she'd call and ask, "You eat yet, baby?" Then, once in a while, she'd say, "You've got something real in you. They'll see it when it's too late." She didn't know how right she was. That night, after reading my mother's text again, I stood in the middle of my living room surrounded by sketches, prototypes, and scattered blueprints. My life might have looked quiet from the outside, but under that silence, I'd been building a future that no invitation list could erase. They thought I was still that struggling little sister chasing relevance. But I wasn't struggling. I was strategizing. A year earlier, my logistics startup, Haven Link Systems, had been acquired for $140 million. I'd moved out of my shoebox apartment and bought a 40-acre riverside estate in Louisiana's hill country, complete with a private dock, an orchard, and an old carriage house I'd turned into a studio. Nobody knew. Not Grandma Lorraine. Not even my closest friend, Kyra from college. Because this time, I wanted my peace to be private. But as I stared at that text, one thought anchored me. They didn't exclude me. They released me. And this time, I would decide who got to sit at my table. The next morning, the fog rolled off the river like breath. I stood barefoot on the balcony, coffee steaming in one hand, my laptop open on the railing. For once, I wasn't checking investor dashboards or design mock-ups. I was drafting something else. A guest list. Not for a business gala. Not for a charity fundraiser. For a celebration of belonging, my own private version of what family dinners were supposed to feel like. If they didn't think I belonged at their table, fine. I'd build mine. My first call was to Aunt Loretta, my mother's younger sister. She'd always been the one slipping me $20 bills at reunions and whispering, "Keep going, baby. Don't let them dim you." When she answered, I could hear gospel music playing softly behind her. "Renee," she said, half surprised, half relieved. "Hey, Auntie. You busy around the end of the month?" She hesitated. "Your mama said they were just keeping it small this year." "I know," I replied, steady. "That's why I'm calling. I'm having something here at the house. I'd love for you to come." She didn't even pause. "Just say when and where. I'll bring my pound cake and a prayer." That was the first yes. I spent the next 3 days calling everyone who'd quietly vanished from my parents' gatherings, the cousins who lived out of state, the uncle they said drank too much, the neighbor Miss Alberta who used to braid my hair when Mom was too busy. Each story was the same. "Your mom said she's keeping it intimate this year." Intimate had become code for exclusive. And exclusive had come to mean elitist. By the time I hung up the last call, the pattern was loud and clear. My parents had started trimming their family tree like it was bad PR, cutting off anyone who didn't fit their idea of success. That evening, I sat at my desk overlooking the glowing water and thought about what I wanted this new dinner to feel like. Not a competition. Not a show. Just warmth. I reached out to Chef Milo Gaines, a Louisiana-born caterer I'd met during a tech conference. He was known for turning soul food into art. Okra gumbo plated like sculpture, sweet potato souffle so smooth it shimmered. "Milo, I'm hosting a private dinner," I told him. 30 guests. No press, no noise. Just real people and good food. He chuckled. "Real people? That's rarer than truffles these days." I'm in. By the time we finished talking, he'd already planned a menu that sounded like a homecoming. Cajun crab hush puppies, braised duck, caramel bread pudding, everything seasoned with pride. The next morning, I called a local planner to rent out heaters and lighting for the courtyard. I walked through the main hall, running my fingers along the old brick walls. I'd restored this house with my own blueprint: steel beams, reclaimed wood, wide windows that framed the sunset like a painting. For the first time in years, it felt alive. This wasn't about showing off wealth. It was about reclaiming worth. I wanted people to eat without shrinking. To laugh without waiting for permission. To see that you could build something whole from the pieces other people left behind. By midweek, confirmations flooded in. 35 guests, all saying some version of, "We didn't know you were doing something like this." That was the point. Nobody did. Late that night, while reviewing the seating plan, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman looking back wasn't the anxious girl with secondhand dreams anymore. She was focused, grounded, and quietly dangerous in her peace. And as the moon cut across the bayou water, I whispered to the empty house, "They'll see soon enough." I was never the leftover. The evening air was honey gold and soft when the first car turned up the gravel drive. By then, the courtyard lamps had already come alive, each one wrapped in vines and soft amber light. The long dining tables curved beneath the pecan trees like a ribbon of silver linen and promise. I stood near the porch, nerves fluttering but steady. It had taken weeks of planning, hundreds of small choices, but now it was real. My kind of real. The car doors opened. Aunt Loretta stepped out first in a sequin shawl that caught every flicker of light. Beside her was Uncle Reggie, holding a foil-covered dish like it was the Holy Grail. He grinned wide. "Girl, you sure this all yours?" "All mine," I said, smiling. And all of you are home. More cars followed, rolling up one by one. Cousins I hadn't seen since college climbed out, holding kids I'd only seen in pictures. Old friends from Langford University hugged me like no time had passed. Even Miss Alberta from the old neighborhood showed up, wearing a hat the color of cranberry sauce and smelling like peppermint oil. Laughter filled the space before the music even started. For once, there was no stiffness, no side-eye comparison between bank accounts or last names. Just voices, overlapping like music, carrying pieces of the same history. Chef Milo's team moved like a quiet orchestra, trays of smoked catfish, glazed ribs, roasted corn salad dressed in citrus butter. The air smelled like childhood and victory blended into one. I found myself standing still, watching it all unfold. The light, the laughter, the comfort. For years, I'd imagined this moment, but imagination hadn't done it justice. At the far end of the courtyard, Aunt Loretta lifted her glass. "To Renee," she said, voice ringing clear. The one who never gave up, even when the rest of us forgot how strong she was. Everyone clinked glasses, voices echoing under the trees. My throat tightened. I wanted to thank them, to say something meaningful, but words felt too small for the feeling swelling inside my chest. So instead, I smiled. I just wanted a night where no one had to earn a seat. Applause rippled down the tables. Halfway through dinner, the band started, a small jazz trio from Baton Rouge. Trumpet notes rose into the sky like laughter carried on wind. Children ran barefoot through the grass. Someone shouted for dominoes. A cousin started passing out slices of pie. It wasn't just a dinner. It was redemption in motion. As the night deepened, I slipped away to the edge of the courtyard, standing under a hanging lamp. From there, I could see it all. The families talking, the joy unfiltered, the faces shining like they belonged. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I was the reason the light existed. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo, not for social media, not for show. Just for me. The people who stayed, the peace that bloomed, the proof that healing could look like celebration. As I tucked the phone away, my screen lit up. A new message. For my brother, Donovan. "Hey. Mom said you're doing something tonight. What's going on?" I read it twice, then set the phone face down on the table beside me. The music swelled, the smell of roasted pecans filled the air, and laughter wrapped around me like a coat. Let them wonder, I thought. For once, I wasn't chasing their curiosity. I was living in my own answer. The courtyard had started to cool when my phone buzzed again. Once. Twice. Then 3 times in a row. I ignored the first ring, too caught up in the hum of the music and the stories circling the tables. But when the 4th call came through, I glanced down. Mom. I hesitated. For years, her name on my screen had meant criticism wrapped in sugar. Tonight, it felt like a test I didn't sign up for. I stepped inside, past the laughter and light, into the quiet glow of the kitchen. The stone counter still held traces of flour and vanilla from dessert. I took a breath and answered. "Renee." Her voice was sharp, urgent, the kind of tone that once froze me as a kid. "Yes, Mama." "What is this I'm seeing online? Pictures of you hosting some huge dinner? Why is your Aunt Loretta there? Why is half the family posting from your house?" Her words tumbled out fast, disbelief turning brittle. I could hear my father's voice in the background, low but angry. "Ask her where the money came from. That place looks like a resort." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I let the quiet stretch, just long enough for them to hear their own noise. Then I said evenly, "I built it. Every inch of it." My father's voice came through next, rough like gravel. "You expect us to believe that? Houses like that don't just appear." "They don't," I agreed. "They're built, slowly, with discipline, and without approval from people who don't believe in you." There was a silence so long I could hear the ceiling fan hum. Then my mother whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" I laughed softly, not out of cruelty, but exhaustion. "I tried, Mama. 3 years ago, remember Christmas? I started telling you about Haven Link's first contract, but You were too busy bragging about Donovan's promotion. That's not fair, she said quickly. No, I said. It's just true. My phone buzzed again, another call waiting. Donovan. I merged it into the line. Renee, what's all this? He demanded. You've got the family acting like we abandoned you. I leaned against the counter, staring at my reflection in the glass window. You did. You all did. But it's okay. It gave me space to grow. He sighed. You're making us look bad, sis. No, I replied calmly. You did that yourselves. I just built something you couldn't ignore. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a soft voice broke through. Grandma Lorraine. Put me on speaker, she said. I hadn't even realized she'd stepped into the kitchen behind me, shawl around her shoulders, eyes sharp as ever. I pressed the button. Gloria, she said, voice low but steady. You and Terrence need to hear me plain. That girl didn't do this to embarrass you. She did this because she finally stopped waiting for your permission to be happy. The silence on the other end was heavy, filled with pride swallowing its own echo. Finally, my father spoke. We didn't mean to. Grandma cut him off gently. You didn't have to mean it. You did it anyway. And now she's showing you what grace looks like. I bit the inside of my cheek, trying to stay steady. Renee, my mother whispered after a long pause. Can we talk? In person. I looked out at the courtyard where laughter still rolled like music through the air, where warmth had replaced absence. Maybe, I said softly, but not tonight. Tonight's not about explaining what you missed. It's about celebrating who showed up. Grandma placed a hand on my shoulder as I ended the call. Her palm was warm, grounding. You handled that like a woman, not a wounded child, she said. I smiled faintly. Guess I've finally learned to answer silence with peace. Outside, a gust of wind lifted the lanterns, scattering gold light across the tables. The family's laughter floated in through the open door, wrapping around us like forgiveness that hadn't been earned, but was given anyway. I looked at Grandma and whispered, You were right. They finally saw it. She smiled, eyes glistening. Baby, they didn't just see it. They felt it. 3 weeks later, winter rolled in slow and soft across the Louisiana hills. The pecan trees were bare now, the courtyard dusted in frost, the air thin with quiet. That morning, a silver sedan crawled up the long drive. I knew the rhythm of its engine before I even looked through the window. My parents. They stepped out slowly, Mom in her cream coat and Dad clutching his hat like it could shield him from what waited inside. Behind them, Donovan followed, his expression caught between guilt and awe. For a moment, they just stood there, heads tilted back, taking in the glass and brick of the house they once thought impossible. My father was the first to speak. Renee, he said, voice cracking a little. This is beyond belief. I opened the front door and smiled, not the sharp kind, but the easy one that comes when you've already made peace with the past. Come on in, I said. It's cold out there. Inside, the fire glowed low in the stone hearth. My mother walked slowly through the foyer, fingertips brushing the frames along the hallway, magazine covers, articles, project photos from Haven Link's expansion. She stopped at one where the headline read, From Rejection to Reinvention, How Renee Hollis Built a National Logistics Empire. Her eyes flicked to mine. You never told us, she said quietly. I tried, I replied. You weren't listening back then. My father stood beside her, reading the article in silence. After a moment he said, I was wrong about you not being practical. You were just ahead of us. For the first time in years, his tone didn't carry weight, just truth. We moved to the dining room, where Grandma Lorraine had already set the table with cornbread, gumbo, and steaming bowls of rice. She smiled at me as if to say, See, you built it, and they came. Halfway through the meal, my mother placed her fork down and looked across the table. We failed you, she said. We didn't see who you were becoming. We made everything about Donovan, about appearances, and forgot that love isn't a performance. Donovan swallowed hard. I let them do it, he admitted. I should have spoken up. I'm sorry. I stared at them for a moment, the girl inside me still unsure whether to believe it. But then Grandma's voice cut through softly. Don't hold on to hurt, baby. Hold on to what's left. So I nodded. All right, I said. Then let's start over. Later that night, the four of us sat by the fire, sharing stories like old friends relearning language. My father laughed until tears filled his eyes when Grandma teased him about his gray hairs. My mother leaned against the arm of the couch, watching the flames with a tired smile. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the years of distance. But it felt like soil after rain, ready for something new to grow. When the evening slowed, I walked outside alone onto the deck. The moon was high, the river still, the air crisp with second chances. Through the window, I could see them, my family, laughing with Grandma. The sound drifted through the glass, soft and familiar. I wrapped my coat tighter and whispered to the cold air. I finally built a home, not a house. Family, I realized, isn't about who remembers to invite you first. It's about who shows up when the story isn't about them. I took one last look at the glow spilling from my windows, the light of laughter, forgiveness, and peace, and smiled. The girl who once begged to be seen was gone. In her place stood a woman who had built her own table and opened its doors. Some endings don't come with applause. They come with silence, peace, and the sound of your own strength finally echoing back. Renee didn't fight to prove her worth anymore. She built it, brick by brick, until it spoke louder than the people who once ignored her. That's what healing looks like when you stop begging to be seen and start designing your own light. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself from someone else's rejection, if you've ever learned that distance can be divine protection, or if you've ever realized you were the home you were waiting for, this story was written for you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever outgrown the version of family that couldn't grow with you? Tap follow for more stories of quiet power, reinvention, and the kind of success that doesn't need validation to shine.